Hello everybody and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol roster building video. And today I made the realization that I haven't yet done a roster building video for a Strucker conditions list, which I feel like is a very classic kind of list that definitely deserves to get an inclusion in this series. So we're going to go ahead and fix that right now. So the idea behind this is pretty straightforward. It's focused around Strucker's leadership here, which basically gives you a bunch of benefits for handing out conditions. It makes it also really good if you have conditions on yourself, you can throw them back on your opponent. So it's really, really good against condition heavy teams as well. Really interesting mirror match as well for what it's worth. But yeah, so Strucker himself plays into it pretty well. He throws out Incinerate on his own thing, and he can throw out some poison tokens, so pretty good in that regard. That's kind of where things start out. So, of course, we're going to be starting with Strucker, and we're going to be mainly focusing on Hydra models that can come with him. We want a solid core of models that are going to be able to hand out conditions relatively consistently here. So the first thing that I want to look at as far as affiliated models go is going to probably be Spider-Woman here. And Spider-Woman's great for this. She can throw 3 different conditions, shock and stun also being ones that not as many others are going to be able to benefit from, or rather hand out. She also benefits from other characters already having the poison condition. So again, Strucker's going to be handing that out. A couple of the other characters we're going to be looking at will probably be handing that out as well. So really good in that regard. And in general, she's just a really solid piece, and she's affiliated. So yeah, she's got a really easy inclusion into this list here with Spider-Woman. Speaking of characters that can hand out poison, though, I think the next one we want to look at is Abomination. Relatively new release, so obviously really exciting there as well. But yeah, he's going to be great at throwing out those poison counters. He's going to be throwing out poison on his basic strike. He's got a poison on his spender here, and then he's of course got that radiation zone effect here as well. So tons of poison all the way around. Immune to it himself, which sure, that's nice to have, I suppose. Pretty easy inclusion there. He's going to be throwing out those conditions for days. The healing is going to feel really nice on a model like him as well, especially with that damage reduction and things there. So yeah, definitely a very solid inclusion for this list. The next model I want to take a look at here is Mr. Zola. And Zola, for a very similar reason as Spider-Woman here, just that original attack here that has the ability to hand out a bunch of different types of conditions and potentially more than one at a time. So really good there. You got some conditions you're handing out on your spender as well here. So that's also really nice. And you have this reroll thing that usually has the downside of giving your allied characters bleed after the attack is resolved if they got a skull. However, we're going to be able to get rid of those bleeds using the leadership because you're going to be able to use this to throw it away. Now, of course, the timing on this actually is really nice. Basically, you gain the bleed because they're both after the attack is resolved. So basically, what you can do is you can gain that bleed from this and then immediately pass it over to them using the leadership there. So you never even have it for a moment. You don't have to risk, maybe not being able to pass it off because it was your second action or something like that. No, you can always pass it off, which is just really good. So yeah, I think Zola is a bit of a no-brainer for something like this. Just a really solid model for this type of list. So for our last Hydra slot here, because I don't want to go too crazy with the Hydra affiliated characters. I don't think it's going to be hard to hit affiliated with a 3-threat leader, and we've got a pretty solid spread of options here in affiliation. But I don't want to go too much further than that because I don't think there are that many amazing options outside of the ones we've already selected in Hydra. But I think 5 is kind of the minimum. So for our last affiliated option here, there's a couple options that I'm kind of floating between. Notably, Zemo 1, just because he's got those bleeds, he's got that consistency on Strategic Genius and the Swordsman. You're going to be able to kind of use that aura to help you get the conditions on all of your other characters. You are doubling up with Strucker's leaderships, or not leadership, but the same aura that he has there. They unfortunately don't stack with each other, but having bubbles in 2 different places is not a bad thing at all. So yeah, he's definitely a solid consideration there. The conditions aren't the best that he's throwing out. It is just bleed, but at the same time, he is throwing it out on both of his attacks, so that's also pretty good. The other option I'm strongly considering here is Modok 2, and he's got the Incinerate that he's throwing out here, and he's got that stun on the Spender here as well. So again, both really, really reasonable options there. Personally, I think I'm leaning more towards Zemo. I think having the extra 3 threat is going to make fitting in splashes and things like that a little bit better. So I think he's my next pick. Other reasonable options would actually really include Winter Soldier Operative here, where he doesn't have anything on his main attack here, but that concussion grenade has the stun and the ability to throw shocks on a bunch of characters, which is really, really good. But I think for now, we're going to look at kind of outside of the Hydra affiliation, and then if we're not seeing things that we really like for those other 5 slots, maybe we'll consider bringing him in for, our 9th or 10th slot or something like that. So yeah, from here, I think there's some kind of obvious auto includes here. I'm doing great at English today, guys. The first one that I want to take a look at, if I can find him here, is going to be Pyro. And I mean, this one kind of speaks for itself. He is just an insane model. He's going to be throwing out incinerates for days. He's got Firewall here to be able to give out the root and slow condition. Pyro is just an amazing model in general, and for a list like this, he kind of feels like an auto include. So yeah, Pyro makes a lot of sense here. From there, I do want to look at a couple of characters who kind of have a more unique ability in the game that not many other characters do, and those characters are going to be Scarlet Witch and Crystal. And both of those characters have an ability kind of like this Hex Field thing here, where enemy characters performing shake actions within a certain range of the character cannot remove specific conditions. In the case of Scarlet Witch, that is Hex, Judgment, or Poison. And of course, the rest of the team isn't throwing out much in the way of Hex or Judgment, but Poison for days. So being able to stop them from removing those is definitely a good thing. And of course, Scarlet Witch herself has this Skull Chaos Magic trigger where you can hand out Bleeds, Hex, Incinerate, and Poison. So again, two more really, really meaningful conditions that we don't have a crazy amount of. And then Poison and Bleed are also going to be, just another source of throwing those out is great as well. And then you've got the Judgment when she herself is damaged. So yeah, I really, really like Scarlet Witch for this type of list, and I'm definitely going to be throwing her in there as well. And as mentioned there, oh, I totally just brought myself all the way back down. But I also think Crystal is a very worthy inclusion for this roster as well, for a similar reason. They can't remove Incinerate, Slow, or Stun within 3 of Crystal. So, if you can double up those auras with Scarlet Witch and Crystal, it can be really, really debilitating to some of those characters that actually want to shake some of those conditions. So yeah, super meaningful. And then in addition to that, Crystal has 3 different conditions that she can throw out here. She's got a reroll 2 to help get those triggers. So, slow, incinerate, and stun, all conditions that at this point we do have characters in the list that can throw out, but still really meaningful. And being able to say you're not getting rid of them is obviously another huge bonus. So definitely something to kind of take advantage with Crystal there. And not far on the list here from Crystal, I think another really, really solid inclusion for a list like this is Crimson Dynamo. Now, he only does throw out one type of condition. It's the shock condition here. But being on a beam attack, you can throw it out on multiple targets at a time. So even if some of them already have shock, or, you're just not as confident in hitting that wild, you're going to have multiple attempts to be able to do it. You're going to get some extra value out of the healing there with the damage reduction that he has here, making him really annoying to take down. And Disruption Field is just kind of a bonkers superpower. So yeah, turns out Crimson Dynamo is a good model, and he's really good for this list as well. So yeah, definitely worth including there. All right, so going into our final selection here, I think there's a few really reasonable options here. Archangel is one I was definitely considering for the bleeds and poisons that you can throw out, and then stagger if they've already got those conditions. Definitely a nice little bit of synergy there, or rather activate if you've already given them the bleed and poison, stagger if not, stagger being something we're not already throwing out. So really reasonable option with Archangel there. Other options include things like Black Cat, who can throw out staggers pretty frequently, guaranteed staggers, which is always really nice. And then bleeds on the builder, so pretty solid in that regard as well. We could do some more incinerate or shock characters. I think Bishop has the ability to incinerate. Yeah, incinerate there, or something like Cable. We could do Bullseye, really, really consistent bleeds as well. Tons and tons of options for kind of consistent conditions that you can throw just across the board. Strongly considering stuff like Groot, ability to hand out those root conditions there, stagger on the spender, that sort of thing is quite solid. Ghost Rider for hexes, incinerate on the beam attack there, also really really good. We don't have a crazy amount of hexes here. I think Scarlet Witch is the only one, so definitely a condition worth considering. Yeah, there's so many options here, and it's really hard to say what the right choice is. Omega Red, if we really want to stack up the poison conditions here, because Omega Red is obviously really good for that. In a similar vein, I think I've already passed him, but Iceman for the slow condition, just super super good with that cold snap there. Just throwing out slows to everyone, stacking damage onto characters that are already slowed. So many options here, and I think if you're trying to build your own version of this list, you can't really go wrong with any of these. Even Shang-Chi's got a relatively solid stagger trigger there. Like there's so many good options, and it's kind of hard to say definitively what the best one here is. And maybe I'm missing one that's super obvious that's like incredibly good. Even something like Werewolf by Night, partially just new model cool, but he's throwing out bleeds, hexes, slows, roots, all of these things really, really good. So yeah, it's hard to say what the right choice is here. And I'm kind of between a few options. I mean, I actually really like Werewolf by Night now that I thought about him. Um, but I also love Archangel here. I love that bleed poison activated stagger. Like all of these things are great for this type of list. We're gonna be able to throw bleeds and poisons a ton with our other characters, so that's just activated tokens for days on Archangel here, which does feel really really good. Um, yeah, I mean that's just good. So I think I'm actually the more and more I talk about it, I'm leaning towards Archangel here. I think he's really, really cool for this, and I don't see myself including him in a crazy amount of lists, if I'm being honest. So I think putting him here is a really solid place. And yeah, that gives us 10 models. So I guess we're on to tactics cards from here. Alrighty, so going into tactics cards, we've got a few options here. So first of all, I think we should take a look at our restricted slots, and I think we're just going to go with the pretty standard ones. We're going to take Brace for Impact because it's Brace for Impact, and from there, Patch Up could be solid, Sacrifice could be solid. Definitely don't think we need Indomitable. Fallback is a solid card, but I usually find the other ones are a little bit more meaningful. In this case, I think I'm going to lean towards Sacrifice over Patch Up. We're going to have a decent amount of healing just kind of baked in with our leadership there. So I think Sacrifice is going to be my pick here, especially since we can sacrifice off of, or before our characters got a chance to heal, so then they'll be able to heal up from that, and hopefully it'll be less punishing. So that's kind of the logic with that one, and I'm going to kind of stick with that for now. Next, we're going to take a look at some character cards, and while we're down here at the bottom of the list, I think it's very, very worth including the Whims of Chaos here. This is one of Scarlet Witch's cards, where basically you get to spend a variable amount of power and pick that many characters within 3 of Scarlet Witch, and give them one of the following conditions, being Hex, Root, or Incinerate. All super good conditions. We don't have a crazy amount of different ways to throw out Hex, so probably going to be picking that a fair bit, or Root, of course, which is also just an amazing condition. So yeah, Whims of Chaos seems like it's kind of up our alley for this type of list, so definitely something we want to include there. Also, speaking of character cards, Pyrotechnics turns out is really, really good. Cares about them already having the condition that Pyro is going to be wanting to throw out a bunch of anyways, and drops objectives, and turns out objective steals are good, so we're going to include that there as well. Next, for character cards, we are bringing the Baron, and he is a Baron after all, so we should probably include this card. Doesn't really play much at all to the leadership, but is just incredibly good for Mr. Zemo, so we're going to bring that there as well. Next, we're also going to take a look at the Gamma Burst card here. This is Abomination's Tactics card, where he gets to push enemy characters that have the Poison special condition away and take damage. And turns out we're going to be throwing a lot of Poison conditions, so that's probably pretty solid as well. Next, for character cards, we're also going to be looking at Elemental Infusion. This is Crystal's card that basically says that when an enemy character within 3 of Crystal takes damage from an allied effect, so it doesn't have to be Crystal, it could be anyone on your team. After the effect is resolved, they're going to gain one of the following conditions: Incinerate, Stun, or Slow. I can English great today, I swear. This actually plays really, really fun with something like Gamma Burst, where that is an allied effect damaging them. So as long as you don't push them too far away that they're no longer within 3 of Crystal, they're all going to take that damage, and then they're all going to gain one of these conditions, which is really, really good. So if you can get those off on like the same turn or something like that, potentially really, really rude. All right, at this point we have 7 character cards, and that's probably already, or 7 cards, 5 of which are character cards, and that's probably already too much. So I really, really want no more mutants in there, but I think first we should make sure we at least have 2 generics that we're pretty happy with, and then we can kind of start every list with, Sacrifice, Brace, our 2 generics, and then hopefully bring at least one of these character cards, and seeing as they're all for different characters, that shouldn't be too hard to make happen. So yeah, I think when we're looking at generic cards here, we want to pick things that are going to be kind of fairly universal for our team here. And one thing I think this team is missing a reasonable bit of is going to be mobility. I think we're definitely lacking some action compression. So getting thrown out of position or pushed out of position is definitely going to be rough for us. So I think Warpath is going to be one of the first ones that I pick here, and is honestly just one of the first ones I pick for almost any list. From there, it's kind of a hard call here. It's between stuff like Recal, Survival, or I swear there was another I was looking at. Joint Effort, that's the one. Um, all of which, in my opinion, are pretty solid cards. Personally, I think I'm going to lean towards Recal for this list because, I mean, we've got a couple of relatively, higher threat, large dice pool throwing characters, namely an Abomination and Scarlet Witch. So being able to recal with them, especially with like, Scarlet Witch counting skulls, gives you a little bit of better dice math on that as well. Definitely feels pretty solid. So yeah, I think we're going to take recal there. And then one thing I wanted to double check here is what we have in terms of healing factor. And I think it's just Strucker here. Archangel doesn't have it, does he? No. So I think it's just Strucker in terms of healing factor here. So I don't think it's worth including. Of course, I've lost all my filtering. But the healing card is probably not something that we want to include here. So I think at that point we're probably safe to take Scarlet Witch's last card. No more mutants. Gives us a few extra options if we're bringing Scarlet Witch, but I think in any given list, it's pretty safe to say we're going to be playing one of either Abomination, Zemo, Pyro, Scarlet Witch, or Crystal. I think that's pretty reasonable to say that one of them is going to make it in every game, no matter what. So I think having mostly character cards is actually fine in this case, and I don't think any of the Hydra cards are particularly good for this this roster. So I think that's kind of a fair space to land on. All right, so the last thing we're looking at here is going to be crises. And yeah, I think we're just going to kind of just, start with the easy ones, which are going to be anything that gives conditions. So unfortunately, I don't think any of the extracts actually give conditions in the game right now. So that's a little disappointing. But as far as secures go, there are at least a couple, and that's going to be Demons Downtown, which is going to be throwing out the Incinerate condition. And if I can find it here, Mayor Fisk, there it is. I passed over it like 3 times, which gives out the stun condition. So I think those two are kind of just an immediate lock for this. They're exactly what this sort of thing is doing. So yeah, I think those work reasonably well. Demons is going to be an interesting one because we're definitely not the most attrition-y list in the world, but I think it plays really well to the leadership, so that's solid. And Fisk is always an interesting one, but being able to get rid of those stuns is really going to make our opponent think twice about even putting the stuns on us. So we're going to be able to kind of take advantage of that, hopefully. So yeah, I like those two. From there, I think we want something relatively neutral. I'm probably leaning towards just something like an Infinity Formula for really no particular reason. I don't think we punish the midline hard enough to really warrant something like an Intrusions, so I'm kind of leaning away from that. Meteors could be solid, but I don't think we're going to be particularly power flushed most of the time. So, pay to flip might be not our best idea, which kind of just leaves stuff like Gamma or Infinity Formula. And I think Infinity Formula is probably better for us. I don't know what our answer to the Asgard 15 is, so we probably just go this way to play safe. Then, as we go into extracts here, we want to be careful. We want to make sure we're not going to be getting too badly screwed over by lack of safe grabs, because I don't think we actually have any in here. Is Abomination one maybe? Large base, medium move? I'm not 100% sure, honestly, off the top of my head, whether that makes it. Not too many of those in the game. But I don't think we have the best roster in the world for extract play here, at least not turn one extract play. We do have a couple solid models for it later. We've got a couple drops actually, so we're not too bad for that. But at least turn one, we don't want to be picking anything that's going to punish us too hard. So I think something like cubes could probably be fine. I think we can play reasonably well on that. Something like hammers could be interesting. We have a lot of triggers that are, however many of the symbol we get, we benefit for it. So adding extra hammers can be good for that. So that's definitely a nice one. The rest of them, I don't know if there's too strong of a preference for anything. I don't think we want anything extremely fast soaring. Like we don't want senators almost for sure. So I think I'm going to start with hammers because hammers is I think the one where I've been able to find the most like actual logic behind selecting. I do like hammers for something like this. As far as the other ones go, we do have a couple of drops, so I don't hate Legacy Virus. I think Legacy could be an interesting one. We could get punished on that one for not having very many safe grabs, but is what it is. We don't have we don't have the tools for that in the list, so it's kind of just the world we're living in. And then from there, I don't think we want to pick another C map. I think we probably go for either Montesi or Cube. And I don't really know. I think either of these could be solid. I think the power from the cubes is going to be nice, and we too kind of get to mitigate the damage with our healing. So yeah, I'm actually gonna lean towards that one on that. And that might actually have me flip Legacy and Alien Ship, because again, we'll be able to mitigate that damage presumably better than our opponent will. So yeah, maybe we do that as well. We're going to switch over to Alien Ship here and hopefully be able to kind of benefit from that a little bit more than our opponent at least. And that is going to do it for this roster. So yeah, just as kind of an overview here, we have Strucker leading the charge. Our affiliated members include Spider-Woman, Abomination, Arnim Zola, and Baron Zemo. Then for our splashes, we have Pyro, Scarlet Witch, Crystal, Crimson Dynamo, and Archangel. Going into tactics cards, we have Brace for Impact, Sacrifice, Whims of Chaos, Pyrotechnics, I'm a Baron After All, Gamma Burst, Elemental Infusion, Warpath, Recalibration Matrix, and No More Mutants. And then lastly, for our crises here, we have Demons Downtown, Mayor Fisk, Infinity Formula, Hammers, Struggle for the Cube, and Alien Ship. So yeah, I'm actually really happy with this list and kind of looking forward to trying something very similar to it, either at locals or maybe for an upcoming battle report because I think this could be a lot of fun. I mean, I'm a couple models, or at least a couple painted models, shy of being able to actually run this for the channel, but I'm working on that, so maybe not a problem in the near future. But yeah, I actually really like the idea of something like this. This seems like it would be a lot of fun to play. I don't know if it's necessarily the most competitive thing that we've done. Not that this series in general is really the most competitive, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's more of a gimmick, and if your opponent has any kind of answer to it, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. In particular, models like Blade and Agent Venom, both of which pretty relevant in the meta right now, are going to be really good against this sort of thing because they can just kind of get rid of all those conditions. Apocalypse, similarly, on his flip side, you just can't put conditions on him, so that's also going to be a thing. So a couple of kind of rough matchups for them, I'm sure. But overall, I think it could still be a really fun list. And I mean, any excuse to put models like Scarlet Witch on the table for me, I'm definitely going to take. So yeah, I think this seems like a really fun one. And I think we've got a pretty good splattering of threats here. I think we can probably make most threats work pretty nicely. This is not enforcing an affiliation, but if I go, enforce leader with Hydra, and we make that our settings, we've still got a pretty good amount of selection at all of our different threat levels there. So that's always good to see. But yeah, I think that's going to do it then for this roster building video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Let me know what you guys think as well. If there's any characters that I didn't include that you definitely would have included. If you've run a roster similar to this in the past and how it's kind of worked out for you, very, very curious to hear that sort of thing. So definitely let me know. I'm really waiting for that first comment to come in and just be like, hey, what about character, this? And I'll be like, oh my gosh, that would have been the best thing ever. Why didn't I include that? So yeah, definitely provide your suggestions down below. Very, very interested to see what you guys think of this sort of roster. But yeah, that is going to do it for me. So once more, I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.